Okay, sorry.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Soul Creativity. Today's episode, I'm so excited. I have a wonderful guest, very creative, and a horse lover like me. So, I think, is how we first connected. Before we get started, I want to just remind everyone to please support the channel by subscribing and be sure to share the video, like the video, whatever you could do to promote the channel is greatly appreciated. Any information about how to contact me or looking for a link for our guest, it's right below the video. So you can always look there for further information. And I'm excited to get started. Today's guest is Lorraine Tilbury, and I already mentioned she's a horse lover, works with horses in her business, and is also a very creative. So, welcome, Lorraine. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Naven. And hi, everybody. It's really a pleasure to be here. And thanks for inviting me.
I might mention that Lorraine is joining us at, is it 11 p.m. there, Lorraine?
Yeah, because I'm
11
in Europe.
p.m.
Yeah.
And she's from France, so there is quite the time difference. And not only that, but I want to take a second to say that it's Lorraine's birthday today. And
Yay!
so we're extra excited that she was able to join us and
Right.
is giving us a block of her time. Lorraine, I wanted to really get started with, I think it's really exciting that you bring your passions together and work and to create your work. And so, two of your passions are horses and creativity. And we were talking previously about why they go so well together. And I'm wondering if you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. So, yeah, I can say it's a gift to me since I'm be invited to your show on my birthday. So it makes it
Thank you.
extra special, right? And what I did basically was I've always loved horses ever since I was a child, and I loved animals in general. I wanted to be a veterinarian ever since I could talk, basically, and I was fortunate to succeed in doing that. Went to vet school and all that, and ended up living in France because my mom is French, and I really enjoyed the French lifestyle, and so I stayed in France. And I'm fortunate to have both dual citizenship to be French, so that makes it much easier to decide to stay here because I didn't have any paperwork to
Right.
go through. So, and so for a long time, I kind of, those were kind of like very tiny side hobbies, sort of, to work with horses. And I love to write and journal and do all those sort of things. And then I discovered a way to combine them together by, I, I read some books and I met this woman named Linda Kohanoff, who's based in Arizona. And she, through her own work with her horses, created this really amazing approach that she developed a long time ago. I think probably 20 years ago now, quite a while ago. And it's basically a way of interacting with horses. Some people call it coaching with horses. Some people call it I forgot the other name. It isn't really equine therapy. Sometimes some people use an approach with horses called therapy, but neither her nor I have any training in therapy. And although it does have a lot of therapeutic benefits, then that's only possible if it's done in association with a trained mental health professional. And without that, there's still lots of amazing benefits in interacting with horses, and a lot of it is because of the skills horses have in nonverbal communication. Because basically, like us, like humans, horses are social animals, and so they live together in a herd. That's their normal lifestyle. And in interactions with humans, sometimes they end up being by themselves in a stable, which isn't for them actually isn't ideal. It's much better if they're able to hang out with their, colleagues, you could call them, or with other horses, and their skill as a herd. That's actually how they survive together in the wild, is through communicating with each other non-verbally. They can make sounds, of course, as you know, horses, they'll whinny and they'll call to each other. but a lot of their communication is actually nonverbal. And it's very enlightening for humans because, in fact, scientists have demonstrated that for humans as well, more than 80 or even sometimes 90% of communication between humans is also nonverbal, which not everyone is actually aware of. And so how does that actually happen? It's through our facial expressions, our posture, but also through our emotions. Emotions have been demonstrated to be contagious. In terms of physiologically, it isn't a a woo-woo energy thing. It's been demonstrated physiologically that if someone is under a situation of stress or feeling a very strong emotion, their heart rate increases, their breathing rhythm changes, and that actually affects the people around them. And a good example of that, if any of you work in a professional like office environment, is have you ever been in a situation where you walked into a meeting room, the meeting was already taking place, ongoing, and you walked in the room and you just knew it wasn't going well. And usually, I think almost everyone sometimes has had that experience, and they haven't, or they stopped speaking because you opened the door to step in because you were joining the meeting, or you were interrupting them. So you haven't heard anything they said, but you can tell that there's tension. So basically, that's part of the illustration of how emotions are contagious. And so horses actually use that as a protective survival mechanism, because they know they're aware of that their emotions are contagious. And for them, it's actually, whereas as humans, we actually spend a huge amount of energy trying to not let those emotions show, right? Mm-hmm. And then horses are the opposite. It just naturally flows through the entire herd. If one member at the other end of the field, of the pasture, I should say, sees something scary and then has this this sensation of tension, then that sensation from that horse spreads immediately to the rest of the herd. Everyone else lifts their head up and says, "What's happening?" And they all react all together, and that's how they protect themselves. So we can learn a lot from that.
That's really interesting. And I know in some work that I did with horses, and I took a class many years ago, and this surprised me at that time because I wasn't quite aware of what the horses were aware of. And I remember the woman that was teaching the class said, within seconds of being near the horse or getting on the horse, they know your blood pressure, they know, all this stuff about you that I found at the time, like, whoa, that's kind of hard to believe. But then just using my mind, like anticipating what I was going to do next or what I wanted the horse to do next, the horse was already reacting because I assume we move our bodies, with our eyes, and mm-hmm. that awareness, that really, keen awareness is so important to their survival. And I'm wondering if you can talk about that a little bit. But as we know, horses are prey animals. And yet you and I were talking about how they're not just sitting victims, waiting to be taken down. And right. I think this leads into information for us as humans and how we might, consider that for ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point, Naven. Indeed, horses are herbivores, right? They're not carnivores. They're not predators. Absolutely mm-hmm. not. And so the flip side of that, if they're not predators, well, then they're prey animals. But indeed, it does not mean that they're quivering victims, waiting to be eaten. They're very powerful animals, actually, as anyone can say who's been even just stepped on by a horse, let alone kicked by a horse. Kicked by a horse can be extremely painful. And it's a well-known fact that horses and all herbivores, actually, when they're in the wild and they're faced by a situation where carnivores are looking to actually try and attack and eat one of them, the carnivores aren't stupid. They never, will go out and directly face a healthy adult horse. They're going to single out the very young individuals, the individuals that are old, the individuals that are not healthy, because the carnivores don't want to spend energy they don't need to spend, and they know that their chances of succeeding actually against a powerful herbivore like a horse are not high at all. And there are many situations that have been filmed now too by people who've visited, reserves in Africa and seen how zebras operate, or natural environments where there are wild horses. They see how they'll group together, often surrounding the weaker members of their herd, and they'll facing inward, and they'll kick outwards with their feet and actually drive away a predator sometimes by doing that. So they're very powerful animals, in spite of the perceived vulnerability because they're not a predator. And but it's true that one could speculate that human society in the Western world, at any rate, seems to be a rather focused kind of on the predatory model more than on the on what my mentor Linda Kohanoff calls a non-predatory leadership model, which is more collaborative. I think a similar term sometimes used in the business world is one of collaborative leadership, where it's much more constructive, and there's a common goal that's shared by everyone, and there's less of a command and control kind of environment, and people operate in a structure that's you don't just do whatever you want. There's a clear structure that's established. It's the same in horses. Horses have a hierarchy. I have horses at home, and there's an order we feed them in, because if you try and feed the most dominant guy last, that never works. He kicks everybody out and eats their food first. So you know who you feed first, and then but that doesn't mean that dominant one is not necessarily the one that all the horses will look towards if there's an uncertain or scary situation in the pasture. Because the dominant horse can sometimes tend to be a little bit too bossy.
Right.
And so often you'll have a member of the herd who's much less flamboyant, less noisy about kicking everybody out when it's time for dinner, but it's still the one that everyone will look to in a situation that's new or unfamiliar. So that's a horse with more of a leadership kind of profile. So horses, just like people, horses have personalities and different skills, and just like people as well, we're all a balance of all of those different skills, and there are some that we just naturally are able to do, very easily, and then others, it's not that we're not unable to do them, it's just that they're less comfortable for us, so they require more effort before we can do them easily. And so my mentor Linda evokes that often a lot, like, it's like going to the gym and building your muscles, right? When you go jogging for the first time, you don't go jogging for 10 miles, right? You start small. And so it's the same with learning to lead in unfamiliar environments, or even also with learning to get in touch with your emotions, because a lot of times in human situations we don't express our emotions very well, and then what happens very often is we stuff them down and don't express them, and then they build up inside like a pressure cooker, and then finally when we can't stand it anymore, we just blurt them out, and it creates like a vicious circle where we're like, oh God, I showed my emotions again, that was not great. And we carry on saying we have to not show them, where in fact, if we're brave enough to share them early, as soon as we have this feeling of discomfort or something is coming up that we need to address, if we're able to talk about it in a constructive way, then it won't create an explosion, and it will bring the tension down. And that's one thing that horses are very, very good at. Them, it's like, feel the emotion, act on it, boom, you're done. And then, what Linda likes to say is you go back to grazing. It's all over. And, they don't agonize for hours over, why does the lion want to eat us? Oh, why am I a herbivore? Life is tough, which of course we humans are very good at doing. The horses don't do that. They just, deal with the situation like almost all animals, right? They live in the present moment, which is really useful if we learn how to do that.
I think that what's really interesting with horses, and it might apply if we just grew our own awareness a little bit, but I know from working with them, they're able to respond to what we're not saying. They're able to respond to our nonverbal
cues or
cues.
attitudes. Yeah, absolutely. That's true.
And so by working with a horse in that regard, it leads you to some insight about maybe your own type of your own emotions or feelings, or places where you're stuck that you haven't been able to get in touch with yet. So I think, in addition to, if not everyone has a horse they can work with, but the idea of growing your awareness and being, picking up on observations and nonverbal clues in the environment is something that we can learn from them as well. Obviously, anyone who's lucky enough to have the chance to actually work live with a horse, I find it amazing. But I think there are clues there that we can use, whether we're with the horse or not. That
Yeah, absolutely true. Yeah, and in fact, at the end of this chat today, that's one thing that I was planning to share. Is there is a really simple approach that you can use on your own, which is actually it's the basic tools that I teach everyone who comes here to interact with my horses.
Mhm.
And it's one of the basic tools that Linda Kohanoff teaches because, in fact, exactly as you described, Naven, horses are they immediately sense your overall state of being. Are you sad? Are you mad? Are
Mhm.
you frustrated? Are you tired? And they sense all of that just through all of your nonverbal cues, which is your breathing rate, your heart rate, your pulse, your posture,
Mhm.
I'm sure many other things as well. But those are some of the basic things that they do sense. And one thing that horses are very sensitive to is they're very sensitive to the typically human tendency to want to project an image of yourself that
Mhm.
doesn't reflect how you're actually feeling. And so, sometimes people talk about a mask, right? Putting on like the social mask, like, oh, everything's fine, even though, in the morning you had a huge fight with someone in your family or with a work colleague, but you don't want to bother everybody with that. And so you're trying to put on a relaxed face, but in fact, inside you're furious.
Mhm.
And so for horses, that is a posture or an attitude that for horses is like the ultimate stress. They will not interact with a human. They will literally run away from you if you do that. I mean, so they
Mhm.
will immediately recognize, a certain element of inauthenticity. You're not reflecting how you really feel. And
Mhm.
even so, for example, people who are afraid of horses, often I tell people it's okay to acknowledge that you're afraid, and that's much more constructive and healthy than to approach the horse and try and put on a show that you're not afraid, because that increases the level of stress in the horse. Who says, "Oh my God, this person is trying to pretend who they're not, and this is weird." And for them, it's a very uncomfortable sensation that they do not want to be around.
Mhm.
And so, and what's
That's
really interesting, that's what I
yeah.
like about working with horses. What's really
Yeah.
interesting is when you teach, and then this tool you can use to basically get more in touch with your own inner feelings. How are you feeling? How is your breathing rate? How relaxed or not relaxed are you? Do you have pain that you're not acknowledging in your back or your arm or wherever? And to actually, when you acknowledge that, what's so cool about the work with horses is that their change of attitude is instantaneous.
Mhm.
And that's what's really amazing is it helps a lot because we've sometimes become so disconnected from our bodies in our current society that we don't even know how we feel anymore.
Exactly.
And because we've learned, no, intuition's bad, you don't trust that. And it's like, so you become out of touch actually with how you're really feeling. And the horses really help to illustrate when you are in touch
Mhm.
with how you actually feel, because as soon as you are and you're connected to how you really feel, and then it's amazing. I've watched it several times where the horse is like moving away from the person like breathes a little bit into their body, becomes a little bit more centered on the center of their body instead of the brain going, what should I be doing, so kind of like disconnect from the brain and go back into your breathing. And the horse will like immediately stop and look at the person like, oh, there you are, I can hang out with you now. You're
Yeah.
not this scary weird thing anymore.
I
So
really, that's like, to me, that's just magic, when you get to work with a horse.
yeah,
For that reason, I mean, they're just so in tune with, especially if you're out of balance in any way or you are having stress,
yeah,
and
they're
that
really
you're
good at
having
that.
a difficult
Yeah,
time pinpointing, the whole um,
right. And
aspect
I
of it.
Yeah, and I
There
should
was,
mention too. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just wanted to mention because for people who aren't familiar with this kind of work, is that we never ride the horse.
right.
So it's open to anyone, even if you've never ridden, if you have no experience at all with horses. None of this takes place on the horse's back. So
Hmm.
it's all done on the ground with the horse next to you. And people who are not comfortable with, I have horses of different sizes. I have some that are very tall, but I have some that are very small and much more. I mean, not tiny, but they're more medium sized. And
Hmm.
so people who are not comfortable with horses, and often we even do things sometimes where they don't actually, there is like a fence between them and the horse if they're really not
Hmm.
comfortable with going directly with the horse. And even that can result in some very interesting interactions too.
Exactly. Yeah, like you said, they're very big. So if you're not used to being around them, or, you have a little bit of fear, that's understandable. And talking about the horses, Lorraine, before we go into the last uh, part that we were going to talk about, I know that you work with the power of vulnerability.
Hmm.
And I think, horses can be very vulnerable, as we talked about. But also, I think, we are. And again, that's something that the horse can reflect or pick up on. And you're talking about the power of vulnerability. I'm wondering if you can explain that to us a
Oh,
little.
sure. Yeah. So the part of kind of the emotional strength training, sort of, that Linda Kohanoff refers to a lot is acknowledging when you're in a discomfort, in an uncomfortable situation with regards to some of your emotions, and then being able to express that often brings out a strong sensation of vulnerability because you're exposing yourself. You're kind of, and it's true that in a predatory environment where there's a predator, and often it's a human, right? Another human in a stressful environment who's just waiting for you to show some sign of vulnerability so they can pounce on you, and take advantage of you. That's partly why growing up, I think a lot of us, or probably all of us, have experienced that to some degree in the school environment. Usually, it doesn't have to be with a teacher. It can be with just other children in school. Children
Right.
can be very, very cruel among each other. So, and the one thing I noticed, or that I learned working in the corporate environment, I worked in corporations for several years, and is that teams that are very high functioning, in the corporate jargon, they used to call them high performance teams, or teams that really work together like a real unit, doing amazing stuff, very efficient, and enjoying working together. And one of the major elements of those high performing teams is trust. They trust each other. And so trust creates that climate of confidence, that you're confident you can try and do things. You'll be supported by the other team members and not dragged down or kicked out. And how do you build that trust in a team? And you actually build that trust by sharing vulnerability. And it isn't, and of course it's not immediate. It takes time to do that. And just like training in the gym, you don't jump in and do 20 push-ups the first day. And the
Mhm.
same with building trust is you share a little bit of information about you that maybe shows some of your vulnerability, and that's respected and supported in the team, and so then you feel more open, and then you can share more. But actually, the more you're able to be your complete whole self, the vulnerable part of you is a very essential part of your whole self,
Mhm.
and it builds empathy and support and trust. With the vast majority of people, of course, there's a tiny minority of the population who aren't able to interact. They're like emotionally handicapped, but that's not the
Mhm.
majority. It's a very small number.
Right. And I think most of us, you're drawn to people who seem human. And,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
um, we're not, at least me personally, and I think a lot of us, you're not necessarily feeling drawn to or wanting to, you can't build that trust with somebody who presents themselves as being perfect, and they have no vulnerability. I think
Hmm.
that we relate better to each other if we at least seem like we have human emotions and experiences. And you know I mean, I'm sure there are a few people around that do everything right and do seem perfect, but I doubt that there are
Yeah.
many of them. And even if
No.
they come across that way, then it's a little hard to believe that
Yeah.
they
And
are. So.
right. And even I mean, almost everything I've read about building up pure connections in, in the social media world is, a lot of it is by sharing something personal,
Hmm.
and I mean, and sharing some of your vulnerability. I remember one woman coach that I had read a lot about with her or worked with her a little bit, and she said, if you're writing a blog post, if it makes you cry, that's a good sign. Because she said it sounds dumb, but it's because you've struck a chord somewhere, and if it did that in you, then there's a good chance that it'll strike a chord in the people who read it too.
Hmm. Well, yeah, because people want to feel some emotion. It's, in a case like that, it's not, it connects you and it's relationship building.
Exactly. It's all about connection. Absolutely. And
Hmm.
in the business world, even though they use all that jargony corporate marketing communication stuff, but
Hmm.
actually what's behind it is a human creating an emotional connection to another human so that they can exchange something.
Hmm.
And you create something that the other person can use and needs. And so you provide that to that person, and then in exchange they provide you either with another service or with money or with something else. But,
Hmm.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, Before we do close out, Lorraine, I know we wanted to talk about horses, and body scanning and how that relates to us. And I know you have a process to take us through. And if anyone is, watching, or a lot of times people tune into the episode later, they may want to get a copy. I know that if they contact you, they'll be able to do that. And so once we finish, we can make sure everybody knows how to get in touch with you.
Okay.
So if you want to tell us a little bit about that and maybe
Okay.
take us through the process.
Okay. Yeah, so what I wanted to offer to you all is kind of like a gift on my birthday, right? Is it's so it's an approach called the body scan. It's not exclusive to this work with horses by any means. It exists in other areas of work as well. But it's something that Linda Kohanov developed as like a very first tool that she teaches to almost everyone before you interact with the horses, because you need to understand how you're feeling before you're going to go and connect with the horse, because it improves vastly the safety of the whole interaction because you're in touch with your whole self. And so the horse also connects immediately with your whole self as well. And so it's important for you to be aware of how your overall body is feeling and what state it is. Okay?
Mhm.
So what we're going to do is, and it only takes about 5 or 10 minutes max, is we're going to scan through the different areas of our body. And well, you don't have to close your eyes. You can close your eyes if you want or not. Some people like to, some people don't like to. And the idea is you're going to just get in touch with each part of your body and just check out the sensations that you're feeling in the moment without trying to change anything.
Mhm.
And then at the end, we're going to do a little something with those sensations. And then, if you like this approach, then I made a little recording that you can use if you want to use it later. Okay. So if you guys are ready, you can just sit in your chair. Some people stand up. We can do this sitting down. I mean, for me, it's late. I'm happy to do it sitting down.
Yeah.
So what I would suggest is just take just a couple of deep breaths, but without necessarily trying to relax. Or just getting ready. Okay. And what I propose to do is we're going to start with the head. So I'm going to ask you to just visualize the crown of where your hair is, the top of your head, and then down to your ears, and just kind of like check in with that part of your body and just see how does it feel right now. I mean, is your scalp itchy? Is there like little? Sometimes I have like little, bits of muscles contracting somewhere on my scalp, and I don't know why. So, is there anything going on there? And then just notice the sensations without trying to change anything. And now we're going to go to the forehead. If you focus on that area above your eyes, between the roots of your hair and your eyes, Do you notice any particular sensation there in the area of your forehead? Do you feel that your brow is furrowed? It's like tense, or is it just neutral? Or is it like a contraction or a pain, like a beginning of a headache? Or do you actually have a small headache or a big headache? Just notice the sensations in your forehead without trying to change them. And now we can move to the side of the head to the ears. And as you focus on both of your ears, do you notice, is there any vibration? Are your ears throbbing? Is there a sound? Sometimes we have weird sounds in our ears that are coming from inside our ear instead of outside. Or do you notice the sounds around you as you focus on your ears? Or are they plugged up because you have a cold, so you don't really hear anything? Just again, notice the sensations you have in your ears without changing anything. And now we're going to move over to the face, to your eyes. Your eyes can be open or closed, however you prefer. And then just notice the area around your eyes and your eyes themselves. Do they feel heavy? Are they itchy? Are they humid? Do you have runny eyes and runny nose because you have a cold or allergies? Or are they just neutral? Are they scratchy? Do they feel dry? So just notice the sensations you have in your eyes. And now we move to the nose. So as you breathe in and out while you're paying attention to your nose, and then possibly your throat as well. When you breathe in through your nose, is your nose plugged up? Or is it itchy or scratchy? Do you feel the air coming in? Is the air cold and you feel it go back to the back of your throat and it's making your throat itchy? Or is it just neutral and you don't feel anything in particular? And now we move to the mouth, the inside and the outside of the mouth. And your jaw, just notice, is your jaw clenched? Is your mouth, tightly shut? And then don't try to loosen it up. Just notice how it is as you explore it. Is your mouth more closed or is it slightly open? Are your lips like pressed tightly against each other, or are they just, relaxed and neutral? Or do you have any pain you might be perceiving, in your teeth or in your jaw? And again, just notice the sensations without changing anything in particular. And now we're going to move to the back of our head, the nape of our neck, just below where the roots of our hair ends, and then down to the beginning of our shoulders. And notice there do you have any pain or any tension? Does your neck feel tight or does it feel wobbly and loose? Does it feel like, are you holding your head, more tilted towards one side than the other, or more forward than backwards? So just notice the position of your head versus your neck. And then if your neck feels stiff or not. And it could be too, if you have any injuries that are older, perhaps you still have some lingering pain in your neck or around your head. And so just take notice of that if they're there without trying to make them go away yet. And now we continue scanning down, and we focus now on our shoulders. And just notice the position of your shoulders. Are they scrunched up towards your ears, or are they neutral? Is one shoulder feel lower? Does one shoulder feel lower than the other shoulder? Or are they positioned at the same height? Are they more stooped, leaning forward, or are they shoulders tightly drawn back? Just notice the position of your shoulders, and if there's any pain or tension in your shoulders. And now we're going to explore the sensations we have in our arms. So starting with the upper arm, and just notice the muscles and bones in your arm and shoulder. If you have any contractions or any irritation, any old or new pain in your shoulder joint. And notice the position of your arms. If you're sitting, are they placed on your knees, or are they hanging by your sides? And the same for your lower arms and your wrists. Notice, do you have any throbbing sensations? Any lingering pain in your wrist, or are any cracking, or is it just neutral, nothing in particular? And now we're going to focus our awareness on our hands, the palms of our hands. Are they dry? Are they sweaty? Or are they just neutral? Is there nothing in particular? And then notice, what position are your hands in? Are your hands clasped together? Are they sitting separately or hanging by your side? Again, if you have any pain in your hands, in the joints of your hands, or in your fingers, just take notice of that. Also notice if the feeling of your hands, are they symmetrical or asymmetrical? Do you have maybe one hand feels warmer than the other? Are the tips of your fingers cold? Or is it just more or less a neutral sensation? And now that we've done the arms and the upper part of the body, we're going to focus now on the torso. So we're going to go back to the chest. And as you breathe in and out, just notice any sensations you might feel in your chest area as you feel your rib cage expanding and contracting. Is there any tenseness, or do you sense the muscles of your rib cage more on one side than on the other? Do you perceive your heartbeat, or not really? Or is it beating very fast if you do perceive it? Or quite slowly? Or does it seem irregular to you? So just notice those sensations without changing them. And when you breathe into your lungs, does the air flow easily in and out of your nose and throat into your lungs? Or does it seem blocked and more difficult to breathe in than out, or vice versa? So now that we focused on the chest, you can go back into the back area, your lower back and your middle back. Your shoulders too, between your shoulders. Do you feel any tightness or tension in your shoulders? And again, don't try to release it. Just notice if you feel anything there or not in particular. And the same with your back, the middle of your back and your lower back. Does it feel symmetrical or asymmetrical? The muscles in your back, do they feel tight, or do they feel relaxed, or do they feel just normal? And now we can go back around to the lower part of your torso, so focusing on your stomach area. up to your plexus. So does your stomach feel relaxed and soft, or is it tense? Is it bubbly or gassy? Or is it growling because you're hungry? So again, just notice any sensations you might perceive in that part of your body. As you continue to breathe normally, and now we're going to go down and focus on the buttocks, on the hind part of your body. And again, the same, how are the muscles feeling tense, or are they quite relaxed? Is there any pain there you notice, or nothing in particular, a neutral feeling? And then if we go around to the front part of that, to your genital area, is it feeling more or less warm or cold? Is there any pain? Is there any discomfort when you focus on that area, or nothing in particular, a neutral feeling? So just take notice of all of those sensations without trying to change anything in particular. And now we continue scanning down the body. We're going to focus now on the hips and the upper part of the leg. If you're standing, notice again, are you standing with your weight more on one leg than on the other? And if that's the case, just notice. You don't need to redistribute your weight. Just observe how you're distributing your weight on your legs. And now we're going to turn our attention to our knees. So are our knees slightly bent? Are they locked in a very straight position, both of them? Or is one more locked than the other? Is there any pain in your knees? It could be from an old injury that you might be feeling something. Or are your knees just neutral and you don't feel anything in particular? So just take notice of the sensations. As we continue to move down to the lower part of our body, now the lower legs and the calves. Are your calves sore? Maybe because you did some kind of sports activity, because you were walking. Are they a bit tight? Do you feel one calf more than the other? Or are they just overall neutral sensation in your calves? And now your ankles. Again, if you have any old pains there from some old injuries or new ones, or are your ankles puffy and creaky, or are they just neutral and relaxed? The same for your feet now. Do you feel both feet the same amount of weight on your feet? Does one foot feel heavier or bigger than the other? Do your feet feel firmly planted on the ground, or you feel like you're slightly floating off the ground? Just notice the sensation you have when you're focusing on your feet. So now we've gone through the entire regions, all of the regions of our body, from the top of our head down to our toes. So now what I'm going to ask you to do, now that we've done kind of an inventory of all the sensations that we've identified in our body as we focused our attention on each of those parts of the body. So I'm going to ask you to pick one of those sensations that you observed in your body. And if you feel like your overall body, you didn't really observe anything in particular, then I'll ask you to just consider the overall feeling of your body, if it feels more neutral or more stiff or more tense or more soft. So just determine an overall sensation of your body if you really feel like you didn't identify any sensation in particular. But often we can find one. It doesn't have to be a major sensation. It doesn't have to be a huge pain. It's just select one part of your body where you notice the sensation that you want to focus on. And also, if you can't decide, if you had several different sensations, you can't decide which one. What I also suggest you can do too is you imagine that your mind is this a whiteboard, with lots of stuff written on it, and just imagine that you're erasing this whiteboard and there's absolutely nothing on it. It's this white space. And then what's the first sensation that you reviewed? Observe what's the first one that pops onto that whiteboard when you need to pick one. And then whichever one shows up, pick that one. Okay, so now that we've identified a sensation in our body we're going to focus on, or an overall attitude of our body that we identified. If we didn't have any particular sensation, we could identify. So now what I'm going to ask you to do is something that sounds sometimes a little unusual, but it can be interesting if you think about doing this, is I'm going to ask you to focus your awareness, focus your attention on that sensation that you identified. And as you breathe in and out, you're going to imagine that the air that you're breathing in is being sent to that sensation and flowing through it. And as you do that, you're going to ask the sensation what information it wants to share with you. What information does it have to share with you? And it's kind of asking your body to share with you how it's feeling. And the thing to keep in mind is that whatever shows up doesn't always make sense. As the body expresses itself more like an artist than a scientist. So it could be just a color, it could be a picture, a little piece of a song, it could be a word or a phrase. And it isn't always obvious whatever the sensation is trying to say. The point is to just be ready to listen to it. Okay, so we're going to do that now. Then breathe into that area, that sensation that you identified. Sending it the air that you're breathing in, as if it was breathing through that sensation. And ask it what information it wants to share with you. And then one way to get a feeling for what it might want to share with you is to do that whiteboard imagination thing again, where you imagine as you're breathing into that sensation, sending it air, that you have again that whiteboard in your mind that you've completely erased as just this white empty space. And then when you ask the sensation, what's the first thing that shows up on that whiteboard? And then a sign that you did perceive the information that the sensation was sharing with you, so to speak, that part of your body speaking to you. A sign that that information was perceived is when, if you breathe back after you've perceived something, a color, a word, a phrase, a piece of a song, an image, and if you want to check back in with that sensation, what you do is you breathe, you perceive that particular information. You can go back and breathe into that sensation again and see if it's changed. And if that sensation has changed in any way, usually that's a sign that you've perceived the information that it was wanting to share. And then usually when you've received the information, the sensation will decrease. Sometimes it will disappear altogether. Sometimes it will intensify a little bit, and sometimes that's because it has additional information it wants to share with you. So then you breathe into it again and ask it again. And if you're not sure you're not sure what information you received, this is something that you can go back and try again. You can take all the time that you want. It's not a race. Of course, we're doing it today in a limited amount of time, but it's a great way to practice kind of getting back in touch with your intuition, because intuition, in the end, it's just your body sensations kind of reacting actually to the external environment, but in very, very subtle ways that you don't necessarily recognize, actually. So this is a way to kind of learn to get back in touch with that. And then sometimes, if you haven't done that in a very, very long time, sometimes the body will actually want to tell you everything all at once. And that can feel a little overwhelming. So in that case, then the thing to project towards your body as you're scanning through your body is to tell your body, okay, now I've learned, I'm going to listen to you now, but you need to only tell me one thing at a time. I can't listen to, it's just like when people talk all at once, you can't hear what they're saying. So you say that to the body, you say, I'm making a deal with you now. Now I'll listen. But you have to only tell me one thing at a time. So Nathan, do you want to share? Did you have any sensation you identified in the information?
Yeah, and it has been quite a while since I've done that. So I picked up really the thing that stood out was my shoulders, yeah, right, in the back, the shoulder blade area. And when I went in to breathe into there, the message I got was lighten up. And the image that I got was the sun.
Oh, nice.
And so then when I did breathe that in, I felt like there was, lessening of that tightness. However, I did feel like, and I might work with this a little later tonight, that there was some more messaging there. So
yeah. So then it's definitely worth asking, going back and asking again. Yeah. Great.
Yeah, that's really good intuitive, body practice to learn to connect your body sensations with your intuition, and an easy way to start paying attention to your intuition if you do the practice.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is something that you can practice, I mean, we did a kind of more detailed one too, so people get the feel. But then if you do it regularly, or you just get the hang of it regularly, you can just scan yourself kind of quick before you do anything really. Or you can even, do that in the morning when you wake up, in the evening when you go to bed. I mean, I don't do it all the time either, right? But every time I do actually focus on doing it, I always, it's almost always useful. And you
Something
just
comes
kind of
from
learn, yeah, and then I just kind of learn to just tune into myself. It's like, does this feel like the right thing to do right now? Yes, no, whatever, so I find out. And so my sensation was in my buttocks, maybe because I was sitting, I don't know. But and then the information I got was rest and focus.
Well, it is late. It is late, so I can see why you're getting the message to rest. to rest.
It's like, go to bed, girl.
And your body's probably wondering what the heck's going on. And it's your birthday, so it's probably saying, "Hey, you should be
Yeah, let's go
treating yourself
celebrate.
to some extra rest."
Yeah.
Well, that was a really helpful process, Lorraine. I want to thank you so much for that. And how can people get? I did put your link to your website. Is that the best way, or if someone wanted to get
Mhm.
a copy of, the little recording
Yeah,
you
that's the
made?
best way. Is on my website. There's all of my contact information. There's a little bit of an idea of the different kind of workshops that I do, and I think I have a few. There's a free session or two that people can sign up to, because what I do is like I connect with the horses and then have people do some creative writing or creative painting to connect back. And so I have a little class called I, I think it's Paint Your Legendary Horse.
I think I did that one.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
My horse wasn't that
Oh, it doesn't, and
that
it
great
doesn't
at
have to be.
the
You know, it,
messaging, and
yeah,
it was
it doesn't have to be.
really fun.
Yeah, and it's fun. And I like, Picasso's famous quote that says, "Everyone as a child is an artist. The hard part is to stay that way when you grow up." So, we all
Exactly.
know how to do it. We just forgot. And the session I offer, it's really for yourself. It isn't
Hmm.
to, you know, exhibit in a museum.
Right,
And
exactly. It's
Yeah,
not
I mean,
fun.
even that, it's a whole exercise in learning to be kind to yourself. And that's one thing that's nice about working with horses or just animals in general. Why do people like to have pets so much? Is pets
Hmm.
love you unconditionally. It's so nice, right? And
Yeah, that's
horses
rare.
horses are the same. Yeah, exactly. And people, it's kind of rare. Well, I think it's hard, just human nature, it's hard.
Right.
Just because of the way we're made, really.
Hmm.
I think that's why it's hard. And horses, that's what's so wonderful. Horses also, they totally accept you exactly as you are. They
Hmm.
don't have any, agenda or yeah, it's great.
Exactly. That's just one. Yeah, perfect and wonderful. I want to thank you so much for that process and for all the information you passed along. And hopefully, again, for everyone watching now or later, you can find contact information for Lorraine under the website. And we hope you'll come back because we can still talk about intentional creativity and painting,
Yeah, lots of other
journaling,
fun things.
journaling and so many
Yeah,
good things.
and
So happy
painting.
birthday.
Thank you again so much. It really was a gift to be on your show on my birthday. I really appreciate it.
Oh,
Thank
thank you.
you.
I'm so glad that you're able to join us, considering the time difference. So I want to thank everyone who listens now or later. And I will be back on April 7th with Linda Yazel. So we hope
Oh, great.
everyone will join in again. And thank you so much, Lorraine.
Thank you. I even really enjoyed it. Yeah, thanks a lot. Have a lovely evening then.
You too. Have
Bye.
a good birthday. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Yeah, thanks. Bye, everybody. Bye.